Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Willis Wit and Wisdom. I'm Eric Willis,
And I'm Bob Willis.
and we're here to answer questions about life, loss, leadership, conflict. Whatever questions you have, we'd love to dive in and answer those for you. Dad, one of the interesting things of life is there is a constant, and that is change. Change
Hmm.
is inevitable. It's going to happen. So today,
Right.
why don't we talk a little bit about change and what that looks like and what that is?
Right. You're exactly right. Change is constant. Always. Nothing remains the same. It's just like people talk, well, I can't believe my child has grown so fast. Well, if they didn't grow, they take them to a doctor. So
Right.
there's always some changes taking place in life and all of us. When I think of change, I'm reminded of Joe Smith, the potter at the Passion Play in Eureka Springs. He's been there over 30 years.
Wow.
And in a 30-minute segment, he will throw a lump of clay on a wheel and he'll spin a pot while he's talking and sharing his faith. And it's just amazing to watch him work. I'm amazed at what, because I've tried that. That's hard. But what I realized, there's change that takes place in that clay, and it all goes with his hands, molding and shaping and fashioning it. And the clay, as far as I've watched him, has never said anything to him about, I want to be shaped this way and I want to be formed that way. It goes by the way of the potter. And I see that in our lives, that we have to go through changes too. And there is a master potter, and he is shaping and molding us. And that sometimes is hard to accept, that I'm becoming a vessel that God is creating. I'm becoming a vessel. And so instead of asking, why is this happening? Maybe we should ask, how can I be used?
Mm.
Because God's going to create a vessel, and we need to consider, how will I be used? And I'm always reminded of something I heard years ago. This very same thing can happen to two people. A bad experience can happen to two people. One guy will drive down and jump off a bridge. The other guy can drive down and record a country western song.
Mm.
Because the same thing, it's a matter of how we respond to it. And
Yeah.
we will have things that will happen to us today, some changes. It's a
Mm.
matter of how we respond to it. We grieve change.
Yeah, and that's
You
that's a
see,
key. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
you
a
see
key.
that in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people don't like change. This is just my personal opinion on this. That people don't like change because change requires grieving. Change requires saying goodbye to something that may have been very familiar, and they're
Right.
entering into unknown territory or have some unknown variables to it that change requires something to be different. And in order for something
Mhm.
to be different, something has to be told goodbye. And so I
Right.
think I think people are afraid of change or don't like change because of the grieving component.
Right. And that is, I recall when I left the pastorate, I've been pastor for 18 years, and that time I changed and went into grief work through hospice. I remember that change. I was going from the known to the unknown. And so that's where I really learned faith and trust
Yeah.
was, I just feel led to do this. But there are people who are listening and watching us today that may be in the process of going from something that they're real comfortable with to an area where they're not comfortable. And there's fear that goes with that, a little bit of apprehension.
Yeah, yeah. And so those feelings of grief and fear and apprehension, those are normal. Those are
Right,
appropriate. I actually tell people I worry about you if you didn't feel that way.
right, exactly, exactly. Yeah,
And so
we like
facing,
to work with normal people.
yeah, absolutely. And it runs the gamut on the feelings that we experience. But the challenge is to put it in an appropriate understanding of what's taking place, of the meaning that you attach to what that change is. Whatever
Mhm.
meaning that you attach to it is going to hold the heaviness or be a little more light depending on the factors that you're using to attach meaning to that change.
Right, right, right. We should plan for the future, but live in the moment. And living in that moment, that's where the changes are going to be a little more adaptable to. We can make those changes this moment, but the fear comes when we look down the road and we can't see what's going to happen. And so we start fearing with anxiety there. So living in the moment with our faith and trust, our heart and our mind together, and saying, I can handle this part, this moment of change, and instead of fearing what's going to happen.
Yeah. You mentioned the potter and the clay, and God's work in our life of shaping us and forming us, and how important that is. Scripture says that man makes his plans, but the Lord directs his steps. And what happens, people who struggle with change, they camp out on the first part of that scripture. Man makes his plans. Okay, I've made my plans. This is the way it's going to go. They forget that, God has a way of directing our steps, sometimes in spite of our plans. Regardless of the plans that we make, we have to submit those under the influence of Christ's mission and allow God to direct our steps, even as we make our plans. So change is all over that concept. But sometimes when we hold on to the way that we have planned things and want things done, and change comes our way, we call it a monkey wrench thrown in our plans or a curveball thrown our way. But the reality is God may want to be directing our steps differently, and that requires change.
Right. And my encouragement to people, in fact, I wrote about this morning in my morning moments on Facebook, is to see ourselves as being shaped and formed in a way that we may be able to help someone else because of our experience. The changes we go through may form us into a vessel where we can help others, because basically we're on a journey that God can use. And we're shaped and molded into a vessel that can encourage other people. Our world needs more encouragers. We need more cheerleaders in our world today. We need people who will walk alongside us in our journey instead of being an obstacle. But walk alongside us and say, I don't understand everything that's going on, but this is what's happened in my life.
Yeah. And especially in change, because change does not allow you to see what's ahead. And you need people who will walk alongside you to encourage you to take another step, even though you don't know what's ahead. So you're absolutely right.
Right. And we feel like we're not alone if someone's walking with us. And, I talked about we grieve change, and the normal responses to grief. We can be angry, we can cry a lot, our moods can change, eating and sleeping gets messed up, concentration levels shot. All of those are normal responses. And so we should expect that to be happening as we're being shaped and formed. We may have anger come up a lot because we don't want to. Well, sometimes the clay may have a stone or a hard piece of clay inside that needs to be molded just a little bit more to get it shaped to be used.
And isn't it fascinating that in order for that to be shaped and used, it requires pressure?
More pressure. It does. Yep.
And we push back on pressure. We don't want pressure. We want comfort. We want everything to be smooth. Well, in order for it to be smooth, there has to be pressure applied to those points.
Right. Yep. And it's constant work to make that smooth. I watched Joe doing those pots, and he has constant work and method. He knows how to smooth those out. It takes a little work to smooth it out. But there's never a perfect vessel. Never a perfect vessel.
Yeah.
We're all one of a kind, unique. Same way with us. None of us are perfect. Sorry, son, I hate to tell you that. None of us are perfect. I know. It's a Willis, okay? It's a Willis. That's the way it goes. Yeah. But we're unique, one of a kind. Same way with the people who are listening and watching us. They're unique in their journey, and I would encourage them to allow God to shape and mold and fashion you. Don't fight back. Don't push back. You can even question why, but you're still going to be shaped and formed in the vessel He wants you to be.
Yeah, I found in my own journey that asking why of God is okay. He doesn't shy away from those difficult questions that we have of Him, but asking why and then entering a season of gratitude, regardless of the pain that it causes or the change that it requires. We can ask why, but we can trust God enough to say thank you. Why is this happening? But thank you. And in the most dire of circumstances, things you wouldn't normally walk around saying thank you for this because it's painful. having an attitude of gratitude is essential, regardless of what that change looks like. So,
right. In fact, there was a man who hung on a cross that asked, why? Why have you forsaken me? And you follow his sayings on the cross, and finally he will say, into your hands I commit my spirit. So he asked why, questioned why, but he was shaped and molded to commitment.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dad. All right, and just last few seconds that we have here, what words of wit or wisdom would you share with folks in the change?
I'm fresh out of wisdom.
You
No,
just put it all out?
Yeah, I just used it all. Now, I encourage people to follow me on Facebook. Each morning I'll put something called a morning moment. It's a little, usually I talk about grief, some aspect of grief. And so you're welcome to do that. And you can follow Bob Willis on Facebook. You can email me if you have a question or a subject you'd like for Eric and I to talk about. You can email me at rwillis14@cox.net. rwillis14@cox.net. How do they catch you, Eric?
Yep, they can catch me at reclaimleadership.org. And I love to talk about topics of leadership, organizational dynamics, leaderships, conflict, and interpersonal relationships. So
yeah, and especially dealing with pastors too. I know that is your heart.
Yep, pastors, missionaries, ministry leaders. What I found is that there are people that are in ministry that don't have a theological degree of sorts. They're the elders, deacons, the preschool leaders, the volunteers in church that see.
Right.
I'm sorry?
I said, you're right. They're there. Yeah. They support the mission.
Yeah. And so sometimes they can get jaded in some of the things that they see in church. And so maybe that's a topic we can talk about another day on Willis Wit and Wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah. Love to.
All right. Well, all right, friends, thank you for joining us for this episode. And we're looking forward to bringing you another one real soon, next week. But until then, God bless you. And remember, you're being molded, you're being formed. Change is inevitable, but the one who is bringing that change loves you more than you could even imagine.
That's right. That's right.
Thanks for being with us today. Dad, good to see you. Love you.
You too, E. Love you too. See you, folks. Thanks for tuning in.